Welcome back. I appreciate your support and taking time out of your day to view this video. I am looking in this portion at Matthew chapter 18 and verse 23. I will be reading from the New American Bible. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 23. This is why that is why the reign of God may be said to be like a king who decided to settle accounts with his officials. In verse 23, we move from the teaching, that is, a teaching on forgiveness, to an illustration. Notice how this is smooth. We are told of a master who wanted to settle accounts. This is a statement we can read back from and read forward from. We will deal with the back from reading in this unit. And reading this back, we are going back to the teaching on forgiving. Why do we forgive? Well, in part because we will be held accountable on this issue. So yes, the verse is a start of an illustration, but it is also a statement of reality. So this is a parable about how our ability or inability to forgive will impact our future destiny. In Scripture, we are told there will be a future judgment of each individual. This is the what, but we are never told the how. I mean by this, we are given pictures of that event, but never is it set out exactly as to how it happens. To this, we add the implications of our own death, which would seem to seal our faith. It seems that Scripture affirms the belief that death is final. There is no, remedial coursework to be done after death. It's graduation time, for better or for worse. So while we talk of a future judgment, we must understand that our death is the judgment of our lives. In other words, whether we live until Jesus returns or dies before then is beside the point. Because once we die, or once Jesus comes, our fate is set. Scripture makes it clear that there are consequences of how we live and what we choose to make of our lives. Forgiveness is, in this larger section, is given priority. Now ask yourself, is that part of a larger list? If you've ever sent a child to summer camp, you will be given a list of what your child is to bring and what he or she cannot bring. Is it that God is working off a list like this and goes, you know what, here, take this list. And so when you get to the day of judgment, you can just know by the basis of this list whether you are ready to enter into my presence for eternity. And is forgiveness in that sense just one of a list of things that we are responsible for? I think it's easy enough to read the Scripture at this point as saying this and see things as this. And there's a part of us within the faith community that at times wants to reduce the Christian faith to a set of rules that we can practice, perfect, and therefore, because we do the rules, we are good to go before God. Does it sound familiar? Does it sound a bit like the Pharisees? Yes, there's always that danger and trap. This would be a mistake. Forgiveness is not so much about doing, but it is an orientation. You got that? Not about doing. It is about an orientation. It is not about us going around and telling people, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. Oh yes, I forgive you over there. No, it's not. It may entail forgiving a number of people, but it is much more than that. Forgiveness roots us in a proper understanding of who we are before God. We are not who we are because we choose to forgive. No. We are who we are because we are forever indebted to God and live in light of that grace. And because of that grace flowing through our lives, we extend that grace to those around us. You see, we are only something because the grace of God has touched our lives. And the Western world, and I keep coming back to this point, we are heavily influenced by rationalism. The church in the Western world cannot help but be shaped by the culture it is a part of, and that prevailing culture is heavily rational. The result is that we have created a rational form of the faith. Now, understand, that is not the real problem. The real problem is because we live in a rational culture, we cannot step aside and see that we have created a church in the very image of our culture. And we cannot see it because we imbibe from and drink of and are inundated by a culture that is rational. And therefore, we cannot see that our church is simply a reflection of that. We have not only created a model of the church and faith that is shaped by our culture, but because we are part of that culture, we do not see what we have done to the church and the faith. The things that are important to us, organization slash management, apologetics slash proclamation, and building slash franchising, or in church speak, church planting. It is not that these are wrong. It is that we can do all of this and never learn to be people who are forgiven and thus treat others in that light. You see, it is not enough to be about and doing kingdom work if we are not kingdom people. And kingdom people are who? People who live in light of his forgiving grace, and by extension, live that grace out in the community of faith and in our wider world, and bringing the truth that we can be people who are forgiven.